Hey everybody, Brendan here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be covering the Eastern Ontario Open, which is not the Ontario Open. That was the last tournament I just did. Now it's a new one, and I am playing against a national master in my first round. So this is, I believe, my first experience with a titled player in over-the-board tournament chess. So let's get into the game. D4 was played by white. I played D5, C4, C6. So we get into a semi-Slav here. Knight F3, Knight F6, E3, and E6. So yeah, you kind of just play like... A good way to think of the semi-Slav is you're pretty much playing a London where your bishop's still on C8. So the only problem with your position is the bishop on C8. So you just have to find ways around getting it out. Knight C3. Knight bd7, bishop d3, and bishop to d6 now. We see castles, and e4. So my original thoughts of e4 was like, this isn't so great, is it? I'm not as familiar with the move. It didn't seem like a good one. Turns out it was actually a move. I just, again, wasn't as familiar with it. Most people here play queen c2. That's like the big main line, and that's what I knew at the time. But yeah, e4 was played, which kind of relieves tension in the center a lot faster here. And it actually has great results for white if they play in a specific fashion here. So there's two ways to play for black. One of them is good, one of them not so much. And I played the move that wasn't as good, taking on e4. It's the most natural move, honestly, because like you take, knight takes, bishop takes, but then when you look at the resulting position, it's not as great. Instead, what I should do here is I should take on c4 and then play the move e5. I was a little hesitant to do this. I did see a position like this in my analysis when I was thinking, but the big thing I was worried about here was that I just let them take on c4 and they have this diagonal. But it's pretty critical, and things turn out pretty okay for black here after takes. If queen takes d8, queen takes d8. We already have a threat of bishop takes c3 and then taking on e4 here. So even though like the structure looks kind of scary, like either f3 or f4 coming, and it looks like we could be worse, tactically we're just fine there. So instead I take on e4, which is the clearly inferior move. Knight takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, and knight f6. I thought about this for a little bit. I was also thinking of like e5 c5 stuff here, but I ended up going with knight f6. We see bishop c2 and h6. So I have a pretty big disadvantage here, and if they see the move knight e5, I'm much worse, but they have to kind of see it. The idea here is my most natural development move is b6, and if I can play b6, bishop b7, and like c5, then I'm actually okay. So knight e5 is aimed towards avoiding that, and of course this is just an awful endgame after knight d7 and f4 here. They're gonna play like bishop e3. I'm gonna like not have a good square for my knight for the whole game. The bishop sucks. My rooks can't even really challenge the open file until I do something with my minor pieces. This is just actually lost at this point. So yeah, not really fun at all. So they play queen e2 instead. And queen e2 is not really as great because now it allows b6 and rook d1, bishop. I play queen c7 first. Then they play knight e5, and then I play bishop to b7. And here, yeah, it's about equal now, because I'm going to have sufficient counterplay with moves like c5 now. So we see h3 here, c5, opening up my bishop, and then they play knight g4, which is actually just a blunder, because this gives me really good play. So let's look at how. Knight takes g4, that was played in the game, queen takes g4, and I play king h8, which now it kind of loses the chance. But there's actually a really dynamic move here, which is f5. And the idea is now we're going to be taking on d4 no matter what. Queen e2, for example, attacking the pawn, we don't care. We actually still just take on d4 here. Even hanging a pawn with check does not matter, because when we look at these bishops, This pawn on f5 is actually kind of like a good defensive pawn, and we have a lot of threats against the black king, or the white king, my apologies. So there's actually a lot of dynamic play here, and there's full compensation in this position. But instead, I play king h8, just trying to avoid bishop takes h6. f5 was not something on my radar for too long, because, you know, when you play a move like f5, you have to realize, like, weakening all these squares isn't as big of a deal as the activity we have against the white king. So I lose my chance at an advantage there by playing king h8. Now we see d5, which aims towards blocking out this bishop, which is actually, it's a very smart move. Takes on d5, they play queen f5, and I play g6. And with this move, I had an idea in mind, which I thought was actually kind of cool. Queen f6, king h7, queen h4. We're losing this pawn with check. We don't want to play g4, h5, because g4 or queen takes h5 actually is possible, because the bishop is pinning the pawn. But either way, they kind of just get out our king. So we're losing the pawn no matter what at this move. How do we want to lose it? And there's a cool move that I thought of. I'm actually quite proud of this move. It's queen e7. And turns out we're totally fine here. They take the pawn with check, king g8, bishop g5 even, and after queen e5, which was my idea here, threatening a potential mate, they have to play f4, but by playing f4, we can now bring our queen back, and we're totally fine. So it's just kind of like a funny maneuver. We give up the pawn because we kind of have to, but then we have this maneuver to g7, all with tempo, so that saves the day. They played queen h4, and I played rook f8, which is not best at all. We should really go for queen h7, trying to get the queens off. I played rook f8. I'm not really scared of bishop f6 because queen h7, but this does still offer opportunities for them to move now, which is not something we're happy about. So they take on d5 instead, and now I play c4, and c4 is quite an active move. It's still worse for me now because I really should have brought my queen over for the defense earlier here, but I didn't. And after c4, there's always potential for bringing the bishop to this diagonal, and that was the big idea. If I really need to, then bishop c5 could be useful. So we see bishop f6, queen h7, and now my opponent makes a mistake with queen f2 here. So they should have played queen g3. But they play queen f2. So the problem is now queen h5, and I'm getting some activity here. Normally they'd have the move f5 if the queen is on g3, like the potential. Obviously the bishop's preventing f5 for the moment, but there is potential f5s to worry about. And also you can see like some sort of like swing around possible. It's just important to stay closer to this king. And just threaten the dark squares, which wasn't really done as much with queen f2, because it also just puts the queen and the king in alignment. That could cause problems. So rook d2, I played bishop b4, which is inaccurate. I should have played bishop c5 first. The idea is bishop b4, and this is just a repetition here. But I played bishop b4 first. They played bishop c3, and now, yeah, it pretty much just goes into a repetition if I want it with bishop b4. They ended up trying to continue the game though with bishop d1, queen h6 now. It's kind of like the only move. Queen h7 doesn't make sense. We're eyeing the pawn on f4 with queen h6, which is nice. So that's kind of an addition to the move. And obviously we're threatening d5. So rook e2, I took on d5. Quite happy about that. Takes, and bishop to f3 here. So I ended up playing bishop e6, which I think is fine. There's also the interesting move bishop e4, because there's no rook e1, and if they go like queen e2 or something, we can just take on f4. So we're quite happy here. And we're not worried about any bishop c3s to get rook e1, because we always have f5 at the worst. And also we have bishop c6 here too. So there's lots of saving graces here. But yeah, I ended up playing bishop e6 instead. We see queen g3, which is actually just a mistake because of bishop d6. And there's actually like potential g5s in the air. Not immediately because obviously they can take with the queen still, but also the pawn is kind of just hanging. So we're almost ready to take it. They play bishop e5, which is like the only move to not lose the pawn. If you play bishop to e3, then there should be bishop takes h3 here. And now we can take on e3, which is excellent. Bishop to e5 was played though. Takes, and queen e3. Check. I should have really played rook d8. I don't know what I was thinking here. Rook d8, if they go rook d1, we're extremely happy to trade off here, like queen d2, for example. And it looks like, yeah, black's probably just winning, actually, looking at this position. I don't know exactly what I could do here, but I played queen e3 check, hoping they'd go queen f2. I don't know why they would go queen f2. They just go king h2. And then I played queen d4, which is another just really, that's a stupid move. I should have gone rook d8 here, where if they go like rook e1 or something, I can just go queen c5. But queen d4 was just being a bit greedy, because queen d4 going for the pawn. Because it looks like the pawn might actually promote, but turns out white has just enough to hold the game here with bishop c6, rook f8, bishop e4, king g7, rook d6. And here, yeah, I should just play like rook e8. I don't know what I was thinking here. Like, the thing is, I thought that what I played in the game, rook h8, which is a blunder, by the way, I thought it was actually potentially going to win here. Because, for example, if they make a silly move, let's just say like a4, rook takes h3 is quite strong. Because they can't take it with the pawn. They can't take it with the pawn, and can't take it with the king because the bishop protects it. So they have to take it with the queen. And in this position, I think it's safe to say that black is totally winning. But I actually blunder with rook h8 because they have a strong sacrifice in return, which is rook takes e6. Very silly move to miss. Just rook e8's fine. Bishop c6, rook e7, for example. I was a little scared here because of queen g5, but now I believe I am actually fine here. And I think the move is, what's the move here? It might not even be bringing the piece there. Let me actually just turn on the engine and see, because I remember seeing that I am fine here. Yeah, rook back to f8. Rook e7 is actually losing, my apologies. So rook f8 instead. And the idea is that since they're not threatening rook takes e6, we can go here. It's also interesting to consider going here, which looks like it almost works, but they can still take. Which they kind of have to now. And then bishop e4, rook h6, but now it's not queen takes h6 with tempo. So yeah, that's the answer for you there. So let's turn off the engine. Ooh. Going back. So yeah, I played rook h8, which allows rook takes e6. And now I don't have rook takes h3, unfortunately. And after I take, queen takes g6, king f8, queen f6 check, king g8, queen takes e6 check. And I played king f8 and also resigned at the same time. Like, there's just no hope here. There's absolutely no chances for me to try to trip them up here. There's threats of bishop to e6, for example. Or bishop g6, my apologies. And it's pretty hard to stop the mates. There's just a lot of potential mates in this position to worry about. So, of course, I ended up resigning, which is quite unfortunate. I definitely had my chances in this game. I don't think I deserve to win it, though. I played a pretty bad opening because I think this was like my second or... Yeah, it was like... I think my second time playing the opening now in tournaments. Like, not my second game, but my second tournament playing it. So there's still some kinks to work out at this point. But I learned a pretty valuable lesson, especially earlier on. There was a lot of like tactical complications later on, which made me realize I should just focus a lot on tactics. And then, yeah, work on my openings when I feel like it. But here, I really should have had something prepared against e4, but I just didn't. One of the resources I was using to work on my openings here didn't cover e4 at all, which is really surprising because it's played, like, this position has been seen, let me see here, it says 904 times, but I guess by transposition, because now after queen c2, 3,300 times for queen c2, and then in master games 760 times for e4. So it's a very common move, and it's definitely something that I should have looked at before, but I just didn't because I didn't really know it was actually a serious move. But now that I know a good way to play against it, which is taking on c4 and playing e5, that is a good lesson for the future. Anyways, that's going to cover it for game number 1. Yeah, ended up losing, which is unfortunate, but, you know, when you play National Master, losing is not really, like, the most depressing thing ever, because, hey, at least I had my chances. At least it wasn't just, like, you know, completely lost from move 1. There's some chances in there, which I think is really important. But that's all, and I will see you in game number 2. Bye-bye.